What is JpnMana? Okay, so JpnMana is a website project that I'm working on. It has three essential goals that I'm trying to accomplish. So I want to teach Japanese language, Japanese culture, and Japanese geography within a single web application. And in order to do that, I'm trying to create what I'm calling a functional game. And the idea of a functional game is, and I'm going to use Pokemon as an example, but if a student or if a child plays Pokemon for some number of hours, they probably learn something about Pokemon, right? And the extent of the knowledge that they learn is specific to Pokemon. A functional game is essentially the same thing, but the idea or the goal would be that the player walks away with additional knowledge about the real world. So the kind of extreme example that I'll use is if you played 10 hours a week of Pokemon for a few weeks, you walk away from that gameplay experience also knowing how to do calculus. So that's essentially the extreme example of a functional game. I want to incorporate those ideas into a game that teaches Japanese language, culture, and geography. And the way to do that is through the combination of AI, intelligent tutoring systems, and ideally, if I do it well, a compelling gameplay experience. And I believe that this can have drastic improvements to essentially the fundamental way that people learn. So I'll give another example here of how this might tie into the concept of the Matrix. So loads of people have seen the Matrix movie, and in that film, essentially, people can download new knowledge directly into their brain and learn new skills, even very difficult skills, arguably like instantly. And the characters become essentially superhuman. I The goal of this project is to do the same type of thing for learning the Japanese language. And of course, I'm not trying to make downloadable content from the Japanese language in people's brains, but what I want to do is reduce the threshold, reduce the barrier of entry to learning a foreign language, right? So if we can make learning a foreign language easier, more people will do it, and more people will hopefully do it longer, which will the overall sum of people's skill in the Japanese language or Japanese geography or culture will increase. And, that would essentially achieve our goal of, making a useful tool for learning the Japanese language, as well as the other topics. So I believe this is possible by combining intelligent tutoring systems and AI for managing the learning goals and essentially learning effectiveness with a compelling video game. And that, of course, might be the harder of the two. Many people are probably familiar with, basically computer-based flashcard systems. I want to incorporate that into a fun video game so that the perceived level of like annoyance or frustration or like the amount of discipline required to continuously play through work through flashcards is lowered, right? So that more people can more easily achieve that same level of success because there's a fun and compelling and exciting video game behind the works that facilitates or promotes productive or effective learning behaviors for the purpose of learning Japanese as a second language. There's two other components to this, which is the language the geography and the culture. And in order to address those, the idea that I have in mind is that the player would practice Japanese language, earn points, action points that can then be used inside the game itself. And by using those points inside the game itself, and I can show an example here, by using those points itself, this here is essentially the gameplay screen. But a player starting at this location 2987 can build things in these land tiles and gradually explore the map, which in total looks something like this. And many of you know or probably realize that this is the map of Japan. And so although many people know of the city Tokyo or Kyoto, if the player is having to move units from Tokyo to Kyoto within the game itself, the hope would be that indirectly they're learning more information about Japan and Japanese geography as a result of this type of activity. And that can be extended further to incorporate ideas from Japanese culture. So many of you probably know that there's 47 prefectures in Japan, and Japanese people tend to be quite proud about their local omiyage, right? The local souvenirs. And so within the game, in addition to exploring the geography and seeing parts of the game, from a geographic perspective, there's also tasks related to learning Japanese omiyage for each prefecture. And so maybe there's tasks within the game that have to be accomplished to unlock omiyage, and those omiyage can be completely correlated with the real world omiyage of that prefecture. In addition to that, there's other information that I've included in the game specifically, which is the latitude and longitude is taken from GIS data as part of the steps for generating the map, but then also the elevation is in fact the actual elevation that I've queried to that lat-long position, and then the terrain type, in this case a mountain, is generated from the elevation data. So these are the types of things that I want to incorporate into the game and gameplay experience. And again, if I do it well, the hope would be that there's a fun, compelling experience for the player. And by playing both the gameplay and the intelligent tutoring portion, we can optimize the learning experience with AI to find and introduce the vocabulary words or kanji to the player at an optimal rate, as well as hopefully keep players around for a longer period of time because the game itself is also an enjoyable experience. So these are essentially the general ideas behind JpnMana and why I'm trying to build it. Now there might be one other question, is like, well, why me and why do I think I can achieve this task? So some of you might know, those that know me, my background is in learning analytics and educational data mining and intelligent tutoring systems. So I did a PhD under my advisor in that field. And then I went on to work at Square Enix for a number of years, working on AI for one of the Final Fantasy titles. So I know a fair amount of people in this area, and I'm somewhat well read on the research in this field. And one of the big dilemmas I see from the intelligent tutoring systems or learning analytics research area is that not enough of that research gets applied to real world solutions that can essentially leverage that to real applications so that people can actually learn through those things. I mean, of course there's a few, right? But not enough. And so I hope this tool and game can be a step in that direction. So those are the goals of JpnMana. Those are some of the hopes that I have for this project, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching. If this sounds like an exciting and interesting project to you and you'd like to support the ongoing development of this project, you can follow our story at the social media sites below, and thanks again.